country. In every town we would visit, we would see little pockets that would become the alternate rock scene in that town. You go to San Francisco, and Crime and the Avengers would be at the show. You go to LA, and you know, the Zeros and the Germs would be there. I mean, you go to England, what would become the Clash, the Sex Pistols, Chrissie Hynde, they were all there. And we all felt like there was a real mood of not only us against them, but a sense that it was time for rock's regeneration.
Yeah, we thought, oh, the rest of the world will catch up to this and they'll realize what we're doing. They never did. And then, of course, the Sex Pistols came along and buried us all.
We didn't really know it at the time, but all over London, there was nucleuses of people who were looking for something other than what they'd been given. And we were all probably 19 or 20, and you'd grown up watching everybody else shine, but you really didn't feel, we didn't feel as if there was anything that was our own.
We were living in a squatting community where no one had any money, so we'd just break into houses and live in these abandoned houses. I looked at all these people that I was living with, and I decided that I could form them into a rock and roll group.
I was working for a cosmetics company, Elizabeth Arden, in a big glass building and working as a computer operator. And I was feeding, punch cards into this machine. In fact, we were connected up to the main computer, which was one of these billion-dollar brain jobs.
We were all people who had always dreamed of making music, but the right circumstances never seemed to be there, and bit by bit this scene sort of created the right circumstance. And one of the things that drew us all together had a lot to do with the shop that Malcolm McLaren had started. Originally it was a Teddy Boy shop, which of course aligned it with rock and roll, and then they made it into this sort of sadomasochist store called Sex.
Basically, here was a shop that was selling black rubber, black leather, fetish wear, on the King's Road to everyday kids who were searching for a scene.
This kind of store where you could go in and just hang out. I got talking to Malcolm. We became kind of friends, but I was stealing clothes off him as well at the same time,
Some of those kids began to ask me whether I was interested in helping them become rock and roll stars. I wasn't. I'd had enough after the New York Dolls. I really was more interested in working in this sort of fetish fashion in clothing. But it soon dawned on me that music needed to give it some propelling force.
I used to steal a lot of bands' equipment. And he said, why don't you learn to play some of this stuff and get a band together? So that's what I did.
I was spotted on King's Road in a I Hate Pink Floyd T-shirt. I'd personalised it myself. That, at the time, I know it seems hard to believe now when you look back on it, but that was just about the most insulting thing you could ever do. They were as popular as the royal family.
We said, can you sing? He said, no, but I can scream and shout, blah, blah, blah. I said, come back to the shop. And there was a jukebox in the corner. We said, yeah, I'll sing along to a song then,
Actually, I picked the Alice Cooper records because the rest of the stuff they had was unbearable to me.
So I put the song on. John was at the other end. We all stood by the jukebox and watched as he performed, looking and behaving like the Hunchback of Notre Dame.
He was just taking the piss out of the song when he was singing it, and I hated the guy, and that's actually how we got our sound. I couldn't play, and Johnny Rotten couldn't sing. And it created this horrible noise.
Voice, just this big howl. It was a sense of exorcism, The Sex Pistols were just blowing everything out of the way. It was an incredible roar of rock and roll.
Everything that was going on in town that was completely over, the second they came out on stage. And I saw that. That's when the old scene died and a new one began for myself.
The thing about the Clash is that they were a lot more experimental with music than the Pistols. The Pistols had their particular sound and they went with that till the end.
And we'd just try and play anything that we thought was good.
They were obviously looking at one of their first loves, which was reggae.
The kind of minimalist aesthetic of punk had a lot to do with what was going on in dub, early dub.
Completely destroy the track and double and triple echo, and that was dub.
It had that urgency that you get from documentary footage. You know, as soon as you see grain on television, you think, aha, this is for real.
The white kids, they never had any form of expression, and reggae was a sound that spoke about my people, my problems.
It was both the protest movement, you know, underground, outside.
It was the only rebel sound around.
Bernard Rhodes, who had introduced me to Mick and Paul, he'd say, why don't you write about what affects you? The dissatisfaction among the young people, the way everyone seemed to be going nowhere. We were tagged as the more positive thinkers. The Pistols would smash everything down, and we would come through with something, another set of values or a way to be, to think, to feel. There was a lot to bond you together.
Wherever the Clash or the Pistols played, when people saw them, after they'd finished playing, 6 or 7 other groups would start up from that night. There was something that the fans could get into themselves. It sort of said to everybody, hey, you can do this too.
They played 3 chords, it was good enough. It didn't matter. Everybody was playing the same Chuck Berry chords, putting the new poetry on top.
Gonna change your world. Gonna change your, oh yeah. Oh yeah. On sale, 50p with a box on it.
It happened everywhere. It was amazing, really.
I had no hope of a job. If I did, it was a job I didn't want. The qualifications I have wouldn't have given me anything, so I had nothing, and the great thing was that you had a way of life that you could tap into, a music way of life. You were actually creating a future for yourself.
I was still, you know, struggling trying to get my songs to publishers, going into people's offices with a guitar and making them sit down and listen to me play, and not really getting anywhere. They weren't really terribly interested.
After so long, girl, and with the way you look, I understand that you were not impressed. But I heard you let that little friend of mine take off your parted dress. I'm not gonna get too sentimental like those other sticker Valentines, 'cause I don't know if you were loving somebody. I only know it isn't mine. Allison.
There just started to be a few rumblings of things going on. I used to read music papers. You know, because that was my only contact with the professional business, really, apart from rejection letters. Sometime in '76, the founding of this label, Stiff Records, was announced. It had been a long time, I think, since such a record company existed in England. They more or less inventing independent record labels or reinventing them.
You used to hold him right in your hand. I bet it took all he could take. Sometimes I wish that I could stop you from talking when I hear the silly things that you say.
And I took an afternoon off and took my tape down, and I went to this office in West London, and there was just one girl in the office. There was nobody there. Next thing I know, I'm called up, and they said, "You're going to get to make an album. We're going to call you Elvis." I said, "Are you out of your mind?"
I know this world is killing you.
Stiff had this energy, and they were thriving off all these things that were happening in London, all this punk stuff. I was reading about it in the papers, and suddenly I found myself involved in a company that actually had something to do with it, you know.
That is true.
We was starting to make some noise in the music press. We'd play some clubs, and a fight would break out, and there just happened to be a photographer there, and they catch the fight, and they put, you know, it was like, there was always something going on, you know what I mean? Something out of the ordinary.
Good Lord. Now, I want to know one thing.
What?
Are you serious, or are you just trying to make me laugh? It's what?
Nothing, a rude word. Next question.
No. What was the rude word?
Shit.
And we didn't know this was going out live, you know.
Dirty bastard.
Go on, again.
You dirty fucker.
What a clever boy.
What a fucking rotter.
Well, that's it for tonight.
The phones were all lighting up, lights were going on everywhere. And Malcolm come running out as red-faced as you can imagine. Quick, let's get out of here.
The following day was incredible. Every newspaper ran headlines, the filth and the fury of the night the air turned blue. Call it punk, we call it filthy lucre.
I had to go to work that day and sat with everybody, you know, they were sort of like middle-aged guys reading the newspaper, the steam coming out of their ears. It was really funny.
What about the word punk? It means worthless, nasty, Johnny Rotten. Are you happy with this word?
No, the press gave us it. It's their problem, not ours. We never called ourselves punk.
It just became like a circus, doing something to get in the press, you know. That was McLaren's thing, to keep the media thing going, and the music really kind of went out the window.
1 week after EMI dumped the Sex Pistols, A&M Records picked them up. Before EMI could get rid of them, it had to buy off the contract. And here they were, signing a new contract that could make them a lot of money, and they already had a song to record for A&M in honor of the Queen's Jubilee.
You thought you'd gotten rid of us, didn't you? But you were wrong, old bean, because we're back with a vengeance.
God save the Queen, my son.
At that time, nobody in England said anything bad about the Queen. There was this most incredible attempt to stop anybody hearing it and buying it.
We could no longer play anywhere. The records were never going to be heard on the radio. They were banned. We could take a boat on the Thames and we could play on the water, a quarter of a mile behind the Queen's flotilla. The boat was finally surrounded by the river police. I was arrested and spent the night in jail. And God Save the Queen did become #1.
You cannot affect change unless you attack the very things that are keeping you down. The class system in Britain, this is perpetuated continually by the very idea that you have a royal family there, and that's not to be tolerated.
The Sex Pistols' current record, God Save the Queen, is at #1 in the Capitol headline today. But the IBA, which administers the Broadcasting Act, has advised us that particularly at this time, this record is likely to cause offense to a number of our listeners, and have asked...
There was such paranoia around the city. Paul Cook was violently attacked. Johnny Rotten and Chris Thomas were attacked with knives. I, funnily enough, wasn't attacked at all.
We had to be careful because a lot of reactionary people come out of the woodwork, you know, and they just wanted to teach us a lesson, so they would say or whatever, you know. So it did get quite heavy, you know.
When all is said and done, really, all I seen was a bunch of spotty kids being naughty. But somehow, it worked. We hit on something there, not deliberately so, instinctively.
The album came out. It was again a public scandal. The name was considered too vulgar, and we were destined to go to America to tour.
It was Malcolm's idea when the Pistols came over to America not to play the typical rock star hangouts, not to come to CBGBs and not to go to the Whiskey in Los Angeles, but to come and play in America. We played at bars that were basically in shopping centers, and we played someplace in Oklahoma City and Dallas and God knows where, all these places that were not really at all on any kind of standard rock tour route. But they were bars that local bands used to play in, so they would come in and just play for these people who wanted to hear rock and roll, and it was pretty rowdy and pretty loose and pretty real.
He fucking put us right out there in the boonies, you know, Deliverance. I felt like we were just like a circus, you know what I mean? And Sid was so out of it, he didn't care, he would fight anybody. Can't believe someone didn't get shot. I didn't give a shit about the music anymore. You know, it didn't matter. You know, it was all about, you know, just, we were all off the edge, totally wasted all the time, you know.
When you first go out on tour and you're out traveling in a coach for 10 months, and it's a shock to the system for a lot of people. Some people take to it better than others, and others start having to take pills, and you're partying a lot and staying up late, and you know, because you like it.
When we got to San Francisco, because so much was going on by that time, we just totally burnt ourselves. And I think everyone had had enough by that time. We didn't want to carry on.
Coming to America was like a nail in the coffin.
I drove almost 200 miles all the way from Silver Springs just to see it, and I enjoyed every minute. And I drive 200 more miles to see them again tomorrow night. I really enjoyed it. I think these people are where it's at right now.
It was great. That's what, you know, music's meant to be. You know, I think that's where rock is going and where it's going to stay.
No fog. This is no...
So my sound was really horrible. Nothing worked. I had a terrible cold. Sid was like fucked up. He didn't play any notes. And John was like, you know, Mr. Righteous and, you know, dig my life, you know what I mean? And the ego was fucking blown out of proportion. And I just thought when we was playing the shows, what the fuck's this all about? What's the purpose of this? This ain't how it used to be like, you know? And we were playing like shit and everyone was loving it.
Ever get the feeling you've been cheated? Good night.
When I said that on stage, ever get the feeling you've been cheated, I meant that for us. We had to perform this stuff because that's what it had become by then. Just stuff, just rock and roll, just trundling out night after night. It had lost its point. It was too much like a Rolling Stones on tour affair. Too big. And indeed, when things get that way, then you should stop. It's the easiest thing in the world to just stop. If you don't want to be a pop star, just stop being one.
The Sex Pistols came along, made an incredible amount of chaos, and then broke up, you know? And left this, you know, left everyone else to clean up their mess, you know? I mean, the Ramones had to go out there and keep playing.
We kind of felt us and the Sex Pistols would become almost like the Beatles and the Stones of the 60s, you know what I mean? Like we were the new revolution, let's say, you know? But America wouldn't have it that way.
And no record company wanted to touch anybody after the Sex Pistols who was in a punk band.
I liked the Sex Pistols, but they were just there for a second. They were gone really fast, and by the time the Sex Pistols had come and gone, there were all these great LA bands playing.
Punk